discussing animal rights and the morality of eating animals. And just like in my past lecture videos, this is not an exhaustive look at the animal rights issue and whether we should eat them or not, or these articles. It's for my Ethics 220 class, and it's just to help them prepare for what they need to know in that course. So let's jump right in. It's supposed to be short, right? Okay. The first article that I have my class look at is Tom Regan's article, which is the case for animal rights. And in this, he sees himself, I'll read it right here, as an animal rights activist, and he wants the total abolition of the use of animals in science, dissolution of commercial and animal agriculture, and the total elimination of commercial and sport hunting and trapping. So that means no longer using animals in experiments, no longer eating animals for the sake of making money or just for the sake of doing it because it tastes good, and there's no hunting anymore for just sport or commercial gain. There may have to be hunting to perhaps prevent animals from overproducing, causing disease, but if you're doing it just for sport, which is what most people do, that is no longer allowed. He believes it should not be allowed. And he says what's wrong with it, as he's actually referring to Singer, who we'll talk about a bit, it's not that animals can suffer, but he believes is that we treat them as a resource, that we see them as something that is just ours to be used up, like an object. We can even see this in passages from the Old Testament that discuss that animals are here in our domain. That is what we're supposed to control. He says that's part of the problem, is that is not how we're supposed to look at it. Animals are not our resources. And he believes it's not about making this, our treatment of animals more humane. That's actually the wrong way to look at it. As you'll see, he believes that animal rights are part of human rights, and it's like looking at another human being of maybe a different ethnicity or different race and going, well, it's not really about making them equal with us. It's just about giving them some things to treat them better, but it doesn't mean they're the same as us. And I think that's how he says it can't just be about making it more humane. They have to be completely on the same plane with us when we're thinking of it morally. All right? Now, why is that the case? He says, well, why do we have any value? Why are we the ones? Why do we have rights? Think of it this way. He says we have inherent value because we have conscious experience. Actually, if I'm looking up here, got a little S in there. There we go. Conscious experience, supposed to say there, right? We have a conscious experience. We are experiencing this existence, being here. We are a being which is there within a world. Now, there's obviously different levels of this conscious experience. An infant has a different level than I might have, or someone way smarter than me has a better level than me, or someone with a disability might have a different level as well. But that's not what makes us have rights. It's not the levels of experience we have. It's just that we have an experience of the world. We don't kick someone out of the moral community because they are less conscious than us. And under that idea, he believes, animals have this too. Okay, any animals which have some sort of conscious experience, they are subjects of life, he says, also deserve to be part of the moral community. And to not accept them would not only endanger animals, but endanger human rights. What makes us, not be able to do that for other human beings? It's not about our higher characteristics, it's about what we have in common. And what we all have in common, what equality should be based on, he believes, is our ability to have a conscious experience, be subjects of life. It's a really interesting argument, and it's the first time that we're going to see is actually each one of these is going to talk about it, this idea that if we don't base it on something that's more primordial between all of us, that it would justify things like racism or discrimination against those that are different or have disabilities. And so therefore, equality should not be based on that. It is based on this common experience we all have, conscious experience. And humans have it, so do a lot of many other animals have it. You might question whether do insects and other things have it. That might be debatable on someone like Regan, but definitely the animals we generally eat here in the United States all would have a conscious experience. Pigs, cows, lamb, turkey, on and on, what you want to think about it, they all should have it. So he believes that actually if we're for human rights, then we ought to be for animal rights. And actually, Tom Regan thinks that this is the same cause. It's not two different causes. Human rights, the logical extension, is we must give them to animals. And of course, he points out here in the end that the philosophers only point to the ideal. Obviously, we know that this isn't going to happen overnight, but this is where we should go, he believes. Okay, so now Carl Cohen, the other article we read, is challenging Regan directly. And he believes that, yes, we should make things more humane for animals. In fact, the way we do factory farming in the U.S., all these philosophers will agree, is horrid. And we need to change how we do it. Also, scientific experience needs to be changed. But in the end, it is permissible to eat these animals. And the reason that is, Carl Cohen argues, is because rights can only arise from beings who make moral claims. And only humans can make moral claims. Therefore, only humans have rights. We should be very careful, he says, of extending rights to things are beings which cannot do this. Doesn't mean we should treat them with respect. But I would say the best thing I could say is more like, a painting, like an actual painting in a museum, is beautiful and we ought to respect it and treat it with dignity. But at the same time, it doesn't have rights. In some way, he thinks animals are like this. Yes, we can use them, we can eat them, but we should respect them. It does not mean they have rights, especially the right to life. He makes that very clear here because of this reason. Now, the argument we can bring, as Regan's in here, is the idea that, well, if, aren't there humans who can't make moral claims? What about the invalid or the ones who are disabled or infants who can't even do it yet? What about them? And his argument is a very famous one. It's called the natural kind argument. And he claims that we are of such a kind, okay, that our species, our kind, okay, generally comes with the ability to make moral claims. Now there are some that do not, but he says we don't eject them from the moral community because of it, because generally our species is one that has this ability. Where if you look at someone like a cow or a giraffe or a chicken, okay, do any of those animals ever come with the ability to do that? He says no, okay, at all. So why would we give them that ability at all if they never can have it? We usually have it, some of us don't, but think of it like a rabbit. A rabbit who's born with short ears, we don't not call him a rabbit. He's still part of a rabbit, he's just missing that, okay? For us, all right, our ability is to make moral claims. There may be some humans who don't have it, but we don't throw them out. We are part of a kind that generally has it. Animals are not. And therefore, animals can never have rights, which is why, as long as we are treat them with dignity and treat them humanely, we can use them as a resource. And that is called Cohen's argument. Okay, so maybe for some of you who are meat eaters looking for a reason why you should be able to do it, Carl Cohen's the guy you want to look at. And then finally, the most radical of all these, the one I enjoy talking about the most just because he's radical, is Peter Singer and his concept of speciesism that he talks about. And what Peter Singer, it actually, some of it's directly attacking Cohen too, if you want to think about it. He accuses those who eat meat, okay, and also animal products that come from factory farms, accuse us of being speciesist, or we are guilty of speciesism. Speciesism is a bias or prejudice against members of another species in favor of one's own species. Obviously, us. It's the idea that we are better than other animals simply because we are humans and they are not. Now, he thinks this is dead wrong. We should not be doing this. He even equates this idea to racism, ageism, sexism. He says it's no different than those. And these, just like racism, ageism, sexism, things we must overcome, speciesism is something we must overcome here in this world, especially the first world. He believes equality is based on our ability to suffer, nothing else. He says we should not. He's actually, once again, attacking Cohen, much the same way how Regan was, though from a slightly different perspective of what we have in common. But he says, he doesn't buy this natural kind argument. In fact, I think Peter Singer would say this natural kind argument is the epitome of what it means to be speciesist. He would say we should not be basing on these higher abilities, like the ability to make moral claims. Equality must be based on the more common, primordial ability between all of us. He believes if we don't do it on that, and we base on some other abilities, we would be able to justify things like racism, discrimination, on and on. And so that ability he bases on is our ability to suffer. He actually quotes Jeremy Bentham. Singer is a fan of utilitarianism. People would say he's a utilitarian as well. He quotes Bentham in saying it's not can they talk or can they reason, but it's can they suffer. That's what matters. And animals can definitely suffer. And by killing them, he believes, is inherently making them suffer when we do not have to. Now, when do we do this? He thinks, well, we commit it at the dinner table every day, as when we do it, or at the lunch table, And that's something funny when reading this, it makes you think about it. How often do you go to a restaurant, or Chick-fil-A, or wherever you're going, and you order the chicken sandwich, and you're eating it? How often do you actually think about it being a chicken? Something that was walking around living, died, cut up, served to you in this way. How often does that happen? I mean, I do it, and I rarely ever think about it actually being an animal. I'm just like, it just tastes good, right? And that's what he says. We are so alienated from the actual process of doing it, we don't even realize that we're committing this. It just becomes part of everyday life. And he says that's what's so horrible about it, is many of us don't know the wrong we're committing. Now, others he points to in his essay, too, about the horrid conditions they're in, the chickens in their cages, how the cows are killed. I mean, we don't have to go in here, but you can look up on any video on YouTube or on Google somewhere, and I promise you can see the horrid conditions of factory farming. But again, it's not just about that. We need to stop that. We need to stop all using animals and causing them to suffer for eating. Okay, for that sake. He thinks all together we need to get rid of it. Now, there are many arguments that get thrown out there, and Singer takes on a lot of them. I'm just going to try to do a few quick ones. People are like, okay, yes, we could be more humane, but come on, Singer. All right, there's reasons we need to eat meat. Okay, one he debunks in there is the idea of health. That in order to be healthy, we have to eat the right amount of protein. First of all, we probably eat way too much protein in the United States. But second of all, there are plenty of articles today in the way in which we can produce soy and other plant-based diets, that you can be just as healthy, unless you have some type of certain disease that prevents it, he believes, that we can be, normal human beings can be just as healthy and do not have any need for eating meat here in the first world. Now, he's not talking about the kid in Ethiopia who maybe has only the goat that he can have and that's what he has to eat. There they have no excuse. But here in the U.S., how many options do we have out there that that would allow us to do this? Yet, we just ignore it anyway. So health, I have a great-grandmother who lived to be 99, was a vegetarian, healthy as could be until the day she died. It's not true that you need meat to be healthy. That's one dispel. Nature, people will point, hey, these things are here, my canines, isn't it within my nature to do this? Well, just because we naturally do something never means we ought to do it. We could take a lesson back to David Hume, and reason is inert and the is-ought gap, naturalistic fallacy, right? And think of how many things we naturally do that are wrong to do. I can think of a few right now, all right? And so nature is not a good argument. Someone say tradition. Haven't we always done this? This is just how the way it is. But think of how many things that we've done in tradition that we discover are horrible. One that he uses in here is slavery. I mean, people have been enslaved since the beginning of time, but at some point we get to the realization is we shouldn't be doing it. Perhaps animals are like that too, is maybe that we thought we should do it now, but we've gotten to a point of civilization, we should no longer do it. So that one's out the window as well. One that I didn't put on here, I was thinking just now of, is money, the cost of it. And I can see that sometimes costs can be a little more for those foods, but if we were to buy more, we were to demand more of these nutritional foods that are not meat, that you would see the price go down. The reason that meat's so cheap and the other food is not necessarily, though that's arguable too, Singer will point out, is because the demand isn't there. If we were to demand it for the moral reason of it, okay, then it would go down and meat would actually be more expensive. And really in the end, is there any reason to be eating meat anymore? He thinks no. The only reason we can justify it is that it tastes good. And that is specious to a core. You are killing and murdering sentient beings and participating in it just because it tastes good. Imagine how horrible that sounds. For Singer, it's like, imagine like a trolley example. You have a train going down the tracks. Let's do this, right? You have a train going down the tracks. But on this case, at the end result of any of this, you're going to be healthy. Let's symbolize health with a little apple here. You're going to be healthy, okay? So, in our first world, each way this train goes, no matter which way it goes, you're going to be healthy. But if you allow the train to go this way, you are going to participate in the slaughtering of millions, actually, perhaps even billions a day of sentient beings. So you're going to be poor sentient beings, okay? You have sentient beings being slaughtered, right? Or you can go this way, get the same health results, and guess what? No sentient beings have to be slaughtered at all. Which one is for the greater good? And what's kind of sickening for Peter Singer is that this is the option we're faced with in the first world here in the U.S. is we could have our health. One of them requires murdering and the suffering of millions of, and if not billions of sentient beings. The other one, we have the exact same result, except no sentient beings have to suffer at all. And which one do we keep choosing over and over again? That is what's so wrong about this. This is where the speciesism comes in, just because it tastes good. I mean, what kind of vindictive and sick people are we, if we were to believe something like that, he thinks. And this is his argument. Sometimes it can be very convincing. This reminds me a lot of the Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil. Perhaps we are participating in something we don't realize is the epitome of evil, but because everyone does it, we think it's okay. Now, last couple of things I want to point out about Singer, this greater good. What about controlling animal populations for health reasons, disease? I don't think Singer is necessarily going to be against that as long as it's doing for conservation and for the benefit of those animals too. That can be very beneficial. I don't think he's going to argue against that. In experiments, though, if you read in here, he is definitely against, almost in all cases, using animals for experiments. He points out that the majority of experiments done in this country is for beauty products. He does not think that should go. We should not be using it. And the test he has for us is, he asks, okay, if we think it's worth using an animal for an experiment, we have to ask ourselves, how much is it worth it? Would it be worth using an infant orphan to test these things on? Now, he doesn't literally mean use an infant orphan, but he's asking yourself, what is it worth, this thing we're experimenting on? Obviously, for my hair gel, okay? Is that something worth sacrificing an infant orphan to do? I would probably say no. But a cure for AIDS, cure for some of the worst cancers, ALS, MS, those may be things that we might be willing to sacrifice an infant orphan. Now, he doesn't mean really sacrifice an infant orphan. He just means if it passes that test, then we can consider using an animal because it would be that much worth it for the greater good. And, but think of how many things we really lead experiment on. I mean, it would probably be cut down by, 9 out of 10 experiments would no longer be done, I think Singer would think. And really, if, one of his other radical comments I do want to make in here that he got in trouble with the NAACP was he claims that, 150 years or so, in the future generations are going to look back at us and they're going to look at our society and go, what was wrong with all of us? How did we not see the horrors of what we were committing by killing animals? And he says that's going to be compared to how we today look back at slave owners in the 1800s and go, how do they not see how horrible it is? And now the NAACP kind of came out and said, are you comparing the plight of slaves in this country, okay, to animals? Are you saying they're like animals? I can see that point. And maybe he could have used a better argument. Many people would say that, but at the same time, in Singer's defense, he's going, no, I'm not bringing, slaves and African Americans down to the idea of animals. I'm bringing animals up to where human beings ought to be. It's not about bringing them down, it's about bringing animals up. So that is his defense. Now, you can go read about it a little bit on Google and how he dealt with that, but that is what Peter Singer is saying. And in the end, I just want to kind of finish with all this here. I know I'm trying to keep this short here. And hit all the main highlights. But the last thing I want to point out is, I mentioned David Hume a little earlier, one of my favorite philosophers, and the reason I like doing animal rights so much is it's the one that really messes with me more than anything. I am not a vegetarian. Maybe I should be, or a vegan, right? But I'm not. And I'm a meat eater, yet when I see these arguments here, I can't help but in my heart side, or I say actually maybe in my reasoning, actually not my heart, side with Regan and Singer that I really do believe here in the U.S. it's like this. And I really have no excuse other than the taste, and it's kind of tradition with me, and maybe I'm guilty of speciesism for doing it. But it just reminds me so much in philosophy, not that it's an excuse for me, but of David Hume, right? Of that the naturalistic fallacy is ought. Just because something is the case, or I can see the reasoning of something, doesn't mean it ought to be, or that it is actually morally that way. I can understand this, but if I don't feel a passion for wanting to, believe in it or do it, then it doesn't matter. I agree with the argument. I agree with that. Yet still every day I find my emotions pulling me towards wanting to eat. If it's part of an addiction, part of our culture, whatever it might be. But I find it curious, and philosophers being hypocrites, don't be surprised. We are a lot of times. But this is one that's interesting me because you might feel that way. And I just want to point out that I don't think I'm high or mighty or anything like that. But it is something that it's curious with me. But think about that. And it's always fun to bring David Hume in on any of these things. So that's it for today, and if you guys have any questions, please send me an email. I'd love to hear about it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.